I think I lost my voice a little bit, but whoever's up, so I wanted to read this. Sylvia, okay? You ready? All right. So we're holding right now, I think it's 2 days before the Shloshim of Dov, maybe 3 days. The Shloshim is when the Avelis ends halachically for many of the Avelim. For children, the minhag is to continue Avelis for another 11 months. But halachically it ends after Shloshim. So there's a lot of mishnayos that people committed to that's going to be due. The siyum is going to be made in just a couple days. So this is something that I wrote back in the beginning of January, but I never really got a chance to read it. Okay, so people asked who he was, right? Do you know who he was? You'll find out now. Meir Dov, okay? So it's cousin Adele's son-in-law. All right, Meir Dov ben Mordechai Eliezer HaKohen, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. He was a son, a father, a husband, a brother, a friend, a grandfather, a son-in-law, uncle, cousin, amongst other roles. And he was a true gift. Dov was so dedicated in Torah, yet so approachable. He was the most relatable person. In a certain way, it felt like this was part of his essence. And this, I'm going to explain later on. Greatness in Torah, its holiness and spirituality in general, could sometimes create a distance. But with Dov, it didn't. In fact, it brought out his good character traits even more. He was a spiritually great person, yet so easy to approach and connect with. Dov had an immense love for Torah, avoda and chesed, including a love for all people, regardless of background. His love, or this love, was expressed in a way that was most unique and inspiring. People that interacted with Dov felt cared for. This included not just friends and family, but even those that never met him before. Examples include Dov helping people in hotel lobbies and other public places. Whether it's searching for their lost puppy or something else, he did so with such devotion and ni'imos, a pleasantness. A passerby would assume they are best of friends. Humility, the true greatness of Dov's tzidkus, would be kept hidden in this way. For who wouldn't be devoted to their close friend? His authentic humor would only further disguise the greatness of his chesed. The beneficiary would walk away feeling good about themselves, barely aware that they even were a beneficiary. In fact, the beneficiary would sometimes feel like they did Dov a favor by providing him with a good laugh or an opportunity to connect or some other reason. In reality, this greatness was due to the credit of Dov. Humor. With his humor, love, and caring for others in a way that made them feel special, Dov was able to inspire and connect with those from all paths of life, regardless of what city, state, or country they are living in or are from. Torah. Dov's love for studying Torah was expressed in many ways. Two examples of this was his daily study of Daf Yomi and his participation in Smichas Chaver, which is the Chabura of Yorei Shemayim that study halacha with Rishonim and its associated Gemara in depth. Avoda. Dov excelled in avoda. For example, he had a love for Tefillah B'tzibor, never missing a minyan, and many times even coordinating the minyan. It's one thing to hear of a Rav or Rosh Yeshiva excel in this area, but when it's an ordinary person, someone who appeared ordinary, it serves as extra inspiration. In this way, his influence was able to reach areas that a Rav could not, for he spoke to the common folks. Midos. His excellence in Midos was both in and out of the home. His relationships with his immediate family and extended family was something to admire. This demonstrates his authenticity, for this is how he was even away from the public eye. Dov greeted people b'sever panim yafos. He truly did, using not just words, but even his body and facial expressions. He greeted others with that twinkle in his eye, that warm smile that made others feel special. Talents. Every trait and hobby that he had was used to benefit others. As mentioned, one was humor. While some people's sense of humor might be separate from good midos, or even interfere with them, with Dov his humor enhanced his midos, and clothed them and him with humility. With Dov, frustrations, even if caused by people, were often relieved through humor, and with Dov's mentality of never holding a grudge, his bein anam lechavero was complete. Hobbies. Dov's hobbies included a love for sports. This included both playing sports and following sports. But with Dov, his choices were unique. The teams he followed were scattered across several cities. He would root for the Denver team in one sport, Chicago for another, New York for another. Why? Perhaps because relating to others and connecting with them was part of his essence, a life mission. As such, every hobby and trait was used in this way, perhaps consciously or not. For Dov, sports wasn't just a way to connect with people from one particular city. For Dov, sports was used to connect with people from many cities. He used it for Avodas Hashem at its maximum. Well-balanced. Dov was a well-balanced individual as well. He had greatness along with its fundamentals. He had the very fundamentals of what it means to be a Yehudi, to give thanks, hakaras hatov, feeling and expressing gratitude, feeling blessed. That was very much part of who he was. Inspiration. Dov was and will continue to be an inspiration to all that knew him, making meaning of all this. Dov sadly passed away on Hanukkah, the yontif we celebrate Torah Shabbat Peh, and a yontif designated to give thanks to Hashem for all that He has blessed us with. Nothing is a coincidence. These are two areas that Dov achieved greatness, as explained above. So perhaps Shemayim needed him there during that time period. Dov also passed away on Rosh Chodesh. The sanctification of the new moon was the very first mitzvah we were commanded to do as a nation. Our nation connects us, and connecting to others is another area that Dov excelled at, and in many ways made him most unique. I wrote one last thing on grieving, but here's some additional words over there. I wrote this: anyone who wants to learn a Mishnah Le'iloi Nishmas is Neshama, please do. Please feel free to teach the Mishnah on this WhatsApp chat. The letters in the words Mishnah and Neshama are the same. Our sages say that Torah elevates the Neshama in the next world, and this is especially true with Mishnah. May any achdus created from this chat go as chus for his Neshama. Then I wrote the last thing was grieving. One last thing to note: nothing can be more painful than experiencing the loss of a tzaddik or a loved one. A tzaddik touches people's lives in the most heartfelt ways and is therefore most difficult to endure. In Dov's case, the pain is multiplied in many ways. The Avelim include Dov's parents, a wife whom he had a very close, long, loving relationship with. And children as young as the age of 5. What? I think they're both still living. Baruch Diana Emes, there are no words that can possibly even describe the pain, let alone bring comfort. Waves of emotion, overwhelming emotion is all part of normal grieving. These emotions come as waves and often conflict. It is an extremely sensitive time for those that are grieving. Reminiscing stories about Dov and speaking of inspirational messages he taught in his life are meant to be of greatest support. At the same time, this is a super sensitive time for those grieving, and it's understandable if you feel the need to leave the group during this very sensitive time, and I'm the one that left the group. Dov was someone that brightened every person he interacted with. He was a true mensch, a pleasure to be around, and a sincere person, very committed. I sometimes would go to Yeshurun and would see Dov during the week and or on Shabbos. I would see Dov and I felt that connection. He had a special chen to him, a little bit like Esther Hamalka, and how every nation thought she was one of them. They would see themselves in her, and that's what Dov felt like to me. He wasn't someone who was defined by his choice of livelihood or any other official position like Rosh Hashiva or Rav. He was genuine and liked by everyone. I remember speaking with Dov around 12 years ago after one of our tennis matches, and somehow the topic of making Aliyah came up. He told me he wanted to make Aliyah. I asked him why. He told me that his oldest daughter is almost in high school. He said that he wants her to go to an all-girls school, and that in Chicago there does not exist a girls' school that is also Tzioni. I didn't really think his family would move, so I wasn't so concerned about it. I was wrong. Around 2014, Dov and his family moved. The reason he gave me resonated with me strongly because it was connected to chinuch. It also helped to explain the urgency. Usually people move after their children have graduated, but that's when the move is motivated by love of land. In Dov's case, it was connected to chinuch. If you reflect on this, it's quite clear that we are speaking about someone that is willing to put forth a lot of self-sacrifice for what he believes in, and wife and family. He was well respected because of who he was, but also Hashem made it that people thought highly of him to the highest regard possible. That's what it felt like to me. There was always the sense that he was loved by Hashem. In addition, as the Gemara says, someone who's loved down here, it's a sign that he's loved in Shemayim, when there's no ulterior motive for loving him. It was mentioned a couple times at the funeral that Yom HaAtzmaut was the last day the family spent together when Dov was healthy and well. Hashem was dedicated to him regarding Dov's most committed values.
I had the chance to spend a lot of time, quality time with Dov, especially when we were driving all the way from Los Angeles to New York over a period of more than a month. And I was so impressed and so in awe. He never complained. He always made a joke out of everything that happened. And we had a lot of different experiences, but he was always taking them with a smile, no matter what happened. It was so special to spend that time with him and to learn from him. I remember once we actually came from Israel and we landed in New York, and we were renting a car, and he's going to drive to meet his wife-to-be, and I joined him for the ride. So we were about to drive to Chicago, and this is a little before Waze came into being. So we landed, we pick up the car, and he says to me, "Watch this." And he goes to the lady behind the counter and he says, "Excuse me, can you give us directions?" And she says, "Sure," thinking he's going to ask her, how do I get from here, Kennedy, to the 5 towns, maybe to Manhattan? So he says, "Excuse me, can you tell me, how do I get from here to Chicago?" The lady looks at him, "Chicago?" She never heard of such a thing. She says, "I don't think I even have a map all the way from here to Chicago." And he looked at me and he winked with that special smile that he had. Always tried to make people just feel great, feel comfortable. Always had a smile on. And I will always remember him for that. Making light out of serious situations just to make people feel at ease. Making everybody smile all the time. I miss him terribly. And I'm sure I will continue to miss him. But people like Dov have the great koyach to affect things from above more so than they had from down here. So Emetz Hashem, he is beseeching now on behalf of the entire mishpacha to only know simcha, to only know nachas. And Emetz Hashem, soon, speedily in our days, we will reunite when Tchias HaMeisim takes place. Emetz Hashem bekarov mamash.